We are Rogue Media Sports.
There are any number of reasons you might consider selling your home. To move closer to family, live within a smaller budget, or just wanting a change of scenery. Whatever your reasons, having to figure out all the various housing market trends in your area may not be what you signed up for. That's where an agent who is a realtor comes in. Realtors have the expertise to help you find the right price and navigate the process to sell your home in a way that's right for you. That's who we are. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors.
You haven't heard about the McCrispy yet? Well, then, you probably haven't heard the sweet silence after the first crispy bite either. Go try it for yourself to hear the best nut sound you've ever heard.
And it is the Doomsday Podcast, and it is a 10-win Cowboys team with a 36-35 victory over the Giants. They go for two. They get it done. And, boy, Ed and I have a lot to say on this topic, but the more immediate concern, Ed, and Ed Werder, by the way, back from Colorado post-Christmas. We get you ready for New Year's, and so happy to have him in studio, Frito Nation Productions. But the Cowboys, we now know it, will face the Seattle Seahawks. We waited this evening till we kind of knew everything. It's now played out. And the Seahawks will be coming to AT&T Stadium. Of course, we'll be getting you the exact time and date on that. It'll either be Saturday or Sunday, and we'll let you know. The Doomsday Podcast will have it all covered. But, Ed, Cowboys now, we already knew they were in the playoffs. We now know who they will play, and they will go into this thing, Ed Werder, with all sorts of momentum. Cowboys win against the Giants. A 10-win season. Ed, who would have ever thought? 3-5 Cowboys. We were burying this team. We were burying this head coach.
Well, that was before they made the coaching change, and that was before they acquired Amari Cooper, which I've given the front office, Jerry Jones, Will McClay, Stephen Jones, full credit for.
Oh, I'm sure they appreciate that.
I mean, there haven't been very many valid reasons to compliment them in recent years, but they got this right. And I'm going to argue when we resume this broadcast after we hear from our favorite band, I'm going to argue that Jason Garrett unnecessarily risked all of that today by playing starting quarterback Dak Prescott to fabricate momentum to go play a Seattle Seahawks team in the opening round of the playoffs that has completely bewildered this young quarterback and twice beaten this team since the Dak and Zeke era began.
Yeah, that has happened, and but don't forget, this team has former Seattle defensive coordinator Chris Richard on its sideline calling plays. So much excitement, Ed. You and I will certainly disagree, and we'll have a rigorous debate on how the Cowboys played this out, but we'll also be able to talk about a playoff game, and can this Cowboys team get on a roll in the postseason? So much excitement.
Just so you know, because we don't often have divergent opinions on something this important, there's only two possible outcomes. You can either agree with me or be wrong.
Yes, you've made that very clear over the years, and I know you won't back down, but I was pleased with what the Cowboys were able to do today. Also want to remind everybody, Glenn Stretch Smith, the one who has really advocated for the firings of pretty much everybody, but especially the special teams coach, will weigh in with his grades as we go position by position. And, of course, he'll let the special teams have it, and he'll be joining us here in a little while. But without further ado, Frito, play the music. And it is that Doomsday Podcast, playoff style. Cowboys finish up the regular season, and they have handled these things differently in the past. Zeke Elliott not in the game. Zach Martin did not play. Tyron Smith. And so, we're able to rest a few starters. But the folks who did play, They went for the win, Ed Werder. And, boy, I could even tell before we ever got into the studio for the Doomsday podcast, people have been tweeting at us. I was watching your Twitter today, and man, you were smug. You were snarky. You were sarcastic. You were so many of those things. You did not understand why the Cowboys would risk so many things and risk everything by leaving the starting quarterback in there the entire game, other players as well, but let's focus on the starting quarterback to start.
Let's do that.
Let me just say this, 27 of 44, 387 yards, and 4 touchdowns, 3 of which went to, this tight end. I mean, Blake Jarwin, Cowboys tight end to the Stars. First time they've had a player do this since 1973. And good win. This could have the trampoline effect. It could be a springboard to bigger things. Ed, why were you so concerned about Jason Garrett's decision today to play for the win?
I'm not concerned about him playing for the win. But I think you have to recognize that Dak Prescott has 32 career victories as a starting quarterback. That's second in the past 3 years to Tom Brady. And Jason Garrett exposes him to a potential injury in a meaningless game, knowing if something happens, he's starting a backup quarterback in Cooper Rush with 3 career passing attempts in a playoff game. So, to me, the decision to protect Elliott and the 2 starting offensive linemen, Tyron Smith and Zach Martin, is blatantly contradictory to playing the quarterback the entire game, and itself demands sitting Prescott because he's more at risk than normal without those guys. So one of the most conservative coaches we've ever known, Garrett unnecessarily risks his starting quarterback's health and playoff availability for 3 hours and 44 passes. The Cowboys enter the playoffs. They've won 7 of their last 8 games. They beat the Giants, a 5-win team. Dak was outstanding in the game with a career-high 4 touchdown passes and no interceptions. But if people think that was just the product of the Cowboys figuring it all out on offense and that's something that's going to be meaningful to them going forward, then you're not recognizing the difference between a Giants defense that's late for joining Odell Beckham Jr., who's revving up the cigar boat on Miami Beach for the offseason, and the intensity that they're going to see from the Seattle Seahawks next week. If you don't see the difference, then you're a delusional football fan.
Well, now I'm certainly no fan, but I will say that Olivier Vernon and pretty much everybody left. The young, they had a couple of BJs on that team. BJ Hill, they've got another BJ. They've had one that's had a lot of sacks this season. I saw a Giants team that was desperately trying to win, and we might have been seeing Eli Manning's last performance for the New York Giants, although there's talk about bringing him back. He was down there with the family taking pictures before the game. I didn't, during the week, I didn't get too caught up. I kind of thought Jason would do what a lot of people thought. I think the announcers thought what would happen is almost like a preseason game. Let Dak go out, establish some sort of rhythm, maybe get a touchdown, maybe lead one nice drive, and then get him out of there, finish the season 9-7, and move on. I will say, as I watch the game start to play out, sometimes you got to read your room. And the one thing I'll give Garrett credit for doing is I think he had in his mind a thought that this quarterback desperately wanted to go out there and win another game, and that they thought it was good to go into the playoffs on a high note. And whether or not you have any respect for the New York Giants, and I don't have much respect for this team because they just don't play very well, but the Giants did stand up and play. They were trying to win the game. And
the
Giants
Cowboys
defense
was not trying to tackle.
Oh, I don't know. Rod Smith didn't. It's not like the running backs went crazy today. I mean, a lot of these plays, to me, Ed, were made down the field. It's not like the secondary was like not trying to tackle. I don't think they had a game plan. Let's not cover the tight end, although it certainly looked like it. I mean, it wasn't about not tackling Blake Jarwin. It was about not covering him.
You think a guy who all of a sudden, who goes 15 games without a single touchdown catch and now catches 3 in the last game of the regular season, you don't attribute that to a lack of intensity at all by the opposing defense, knowing that their season's over?
I would attribute sort of a lack of intensity or a lack of execution the entire season. I wouldn't limit it to today for the Giants. I mean, we knew they were playing a bad Giants team, but I'm just saying without 3 starting offensive linemen, 2 of which have been playing most of this season, and without their star running back, they went out there and beat an NFL team.
But they shouldn't have been putting their quarterback at risk in that circumstance.
Well, here's the thing.
A guy who's been sacked 52 times under the best of circumstances.
A lot of times. I would argue that there haven't been like
take a blown ACL. It takes a sprained ankle or a concussion, and now you have no control over whether he plays in 6 or 7 days against Seattle.
I know, but I get that, and there are times in the preseason I've made this argument. There's no reason to put him out there. There's no reason to put him in harm's way. They believed that it was good to keep him in a rhythm or get him in a rhythm. We didn't think he was that great against Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay doesn't have a good team. They give up a ton of passing yards. He really wasn't that good. Did he even have 200 yards? I don't think he did against a bad Tampa Bay team. He goes out there today, puts up huge numbers, 4 touchdowns, and I would say this, even after watching it all play out, I got the feeling as I watched this that the Jarwin connection is one they can build on. I don't think it was a product of some sort of like weird preseason experience. I think Blake Jarwin made some really nice plays, has a huge catch radius,
so where's it been
and got open. I don't know. I don't care. I don't really care. They found a way. Well, by the way, the tight ends have been getting, I mean, I know you've noticed this. Over the past 3 or 4 weeks, the tight ends have played more of a role in this passing offense.
Have we seen the Cowboys convert 3 out of 4 red zone opportunities anytime recently?
Buddy, but when it happens, you can't just go, "Oh no, this was fake. This was fake news."
It was. That's
you
what it
sound
was.
like Trump.
It was against air. It was like a 7-on-7 game. Well, here's
I did not. Okay, that's where we differ because I mean I get what you're saying, and I get everybody. Boy, Richie Witt was shouting me down, former beat writer for the Star Telegram, and you were shouting me down. I mean, you weren't really coming after me personally. I think Richie Witt and others were, but I just felt like with this Cowboys team and not really knowing. Do you ever trust this team really? I mean, just when we started to trust it, they went to Indy, and you and I really were the only ones who were highly critical of the team after that game. Everybody else was like, "Let's go meet them at the airport." They had, that's okay. Natural letdown. I mean, our old buddy Jacques. Jacques Taylor, oh, man, this was inevitable that they were going to have the letdown. Well, I never understood that. Now I see the genius of this. They had the letdown, they rested against Indy, and then finished the season with 2 wins, and they go bolting into the playoffs.
Well, I'd sure like to hear. I'd like to hear all you guys talk about what a genius move this was if the quarterback had gotten hurt and Cooper Rush is your starter next week.
Quarterback can get hurt any week.
But he doesn't have to get hurt when he shouldn't be playing when you don't need anything out of him. So here's the thing. I reached out to 3 people after the game in the Cowboys organization.
Yeah, okay.
And I asked for an explanation.
Start firing all your research at me.
Here's what I got.
All right.
The first person is a coach who said, "We roll with number 4. We thought this game was real important, even if it didn't change our seed. Great job of our quarterback showing this organization, coaches, and teammates what he is all about."
Love it.
In my opinion.
That backs me up.
2
Thank
front
you.
office people needed to play, and plan was to work on the passing game. He wanted to play. And then the third person just felt we needed some momentum, and it worked out. So what they're really saying is that Dak needed a confidence boost. Either he didn't think he was mentally strong enough and prepared to lead this team in the playoffs next week, or his teammates didn't have that faith in him, or the front office and the coaching staff didn't have that faith in him unless he went out and had a brilliant game in Week 16 and risked himself to an injury. That's what they're saying. They didn't think he was ready. He had to have a big game to go into the playoffs because otherwise he's going to let us down. Well, why?
No, they didn't say that.
That is what they said.
But you're adding that part.
That's my
otherwise
interpretation.
he's going to let us down. Okay, that's fine, but it's your interpretation. That's not the words they say. You're kind of taking the words they say.
Great job
of
our quarterback showing this organization, coaches, and teammates what he's all about.
Okay, but they didn't come out and go, otherwise he was going to let us down.
Of course not.
No, I know. You're adding that.
So I'm saying, okay, what was it that made this worth the risk?
Because this guy had one of his best performances of the season, and did you see that team celebrating?
For 400 yards. Can you imagine what he would be like next week?
I don't care.
Oh,
No.
they should have played
They weren't
Zeke.
worried about Zeke. No.
Yeah,
Why
they're
don't
not
they
worried
worry
about Zeke.
They weren't.
Look,
They know he's fine.
Every other team in football.
They told you they were worried about the quarterback more than Zeke.
Every other team in football protects the quarterback first. The Cowboys protect 2 offensive linemen and a running back.
That's okay. They were protecting the psyche of the quarterback. That's the exact. That's the message they were sending you today.
Because this wasn't guaranteed to be a success. What if he had played lousy again?
It would have been bad.
And
they gambled and go. Same thing you were talking about. They said this isn't a very good Giants team. It's not a very good Giants defense. What if we got him? What if we got some things established? What if we just started throwing the ball quite a bit to Jarwin? Now, if we want to sit here and go, why wasn't Linehan? If they've got this big 6'5", 6'6" kid running across the middle who's got a great catch radius, has pretty good hands, why were they not doing this early in the season? Now, I'm with you on all that, but I'm just saying they decided, and I love you talking to all these people, because in a sense, that's exactly what they were saying. We wanted this quarterback to go out and build some more momentum. So the other part of that is, I agree with you, that probably does mean they were like, he probably needs a little more. This guy needs some more momentum. They didn't even like the way he played against Tampa Bay. We beat Tampa Bay, but he really wasn't that impressive. But now, Ed, you got to say, as much as you were dug in on this point, and I always appreciate it because you're not a man who will admit when you're wrong, and you in your mind you've never been.
I will if you prove me wrong.
But no. I'm just saying the guy made some gorgeous throws.
I know he played great,
and I think that's something you can build on.
But I'm just saying, the only reason your argument is even remotely valid is because he escaped the game without the injury, which was the risk. If he gets hurt in the game, everybody agrees with me. Right? So it was a foolish risk. They got away with it. And maybe they'll realize some minor benefit because the quarterback feels good about himself coming off this game. And I got to say,
I know how these things work, though.
That I feel like I have been as supportive of Dak as any media member in the entire country, mostly against Cowboys fans who think he's terrible. I have always urged people to be cautious and patient, to compare him in a similar, point in his career with his predecessor, the beloved Tony Romo. I recognize he played well in that last playoff game against Green Bay, went toe-to-toe with Aaron Rodgers. And to me, there was just no justification for playing this guy as long as they did with a bad offensive line, without 2 of its best players. I mean, even with their best players on the offensive line, the guy's been sacked 52 times. That's 20 more times than he's been sacked in any other season. The guy is big and strong and mobile, but he's not invincible. Any quarterback can be hurt. It happened to Derek Carr and the Raiders at the end of their season 2 years ago. It happened to Marcus Mariota. Quarterbacks, no matter how young they are, they get hurt. And it was a foolish, unnecessary risk to play him at all in this game, let alone to play him for 4 quarters.
And you're so dug in on your point, and I appreciate this. And you won't be the one to do this. So let me eliminate you from this. But I promise you what will happen is if the Cowboys somehow get on a roll and get to the NFC title game, heaven forbid. That hasn't happened in many, many years around here. But if it happens, the stories that will be written, maybe even by me, we'll come back to this was a springboard. I say this because I covered the Giants when they went to that Super Bowl, and I get it, and I know
2007.
You've made a good point on the fact that
they had to play their guys.
But the
they
thing
were
is,
facing a undefeated Patriots team, the whole league.
They didn't have to.
Everybody in the league put pressure on the Giants and Tom Coughlin to play all out in that game.
He could have done anything he wanted. They were already in the playoffs. So Tom Coughlin could have done anything he wanted.
You can't compare this situation to that one.
When they went on that roll, we made a big deal out of how that was a springboard. And I promise you, if the Cowboys get on some kind of roll, they will look back at this, quote, meaningless Giants game and say, that really gave Dak a lot of confidence.
Okay.
And that story will be written. And if that happens, it'll be more than a minor thing. So,
and because of what I'm going to tell you when we get around to talking and breaking down the Seattle Seahawks, their opponent, there is the smallest bit of merit to getting this quarterback to believe in his ability because of how poorly he has played against Seattle.
Okay. I feel like
that being said, it was still an idiotic decision.
Thank you for giving in and conceding the argument to me. And we'll have a lot more to get into. We do have Glenn Stretch Smith.
I think it shows how much confidence they had in Cooper Rush.
That's right. Glenn Stretch Smith is going to give us he's going to give us grades. And then what we're going to do after that, Ed, I think it's time for you and I to start looking ahead and to start thinking about this upcoming Seattle game. I mean, we can only talk so much about this game you hated so much, but I do think there were some good things that happened, including, by the way, I'll say it again, Blake Jarwin. They have hit upon something. Something tells me Stretch will be willing to talk about that, but they have a tight end. No longer is Jason Garrett begging Jason Witten to come out of the broadcast booth. They have found.
You haven't even talked about Rico Gathers all day. He was so good. That's how good he was.
Was he even active?
You haven't mentioned Rico Gathers.
I didn't see much of him, but Jarwin, what a performance. Now, I want to say this before we get to Stretch. For over 30 years, Hodges Capital has had one primary focus, focusing on U.S. stocks. Our 10-person investment team combs the investment landscape and handpicks selected undervalued and underfollowed companies. Can you imagine that, Ed? There's a few of those out there that are undervalued and underfollowed. If you're looking for someone to make your investment assets grow, consider Hodges Capital Management and the Hodges Fund, HodgesCapital.com or HodgesFunds.com. Those are my friends. And your friend, Ed, as well, Craig and Clark Hodges, Don Hodges, their late father, unbelievable foresight to start this group and to start this company, and they have been doing it for years. And there's a reason why you turn it on CNBC, MSNBC, all these things, Ed, where you get all your financial news and you say, oh, what's happened, Trump? Why are the numbers down? And the Hodges are finding those undervalued stocks and making people wealthy. Ed, you are a man who needs to go see the Hodges, even though you've done
well. They can make me wealthy?
Well, with your money.
I thought you were going to make me wealthy.
You're already wealthy. No, this Doomsday podcast will do the trick. But Ed, and by the way, you've done a great job on the Doomsday podcast, even as it's been a strange time for you. I really appreciate you using this outlet to kind of get your NFL Joneses out, or whatever I would use there. It is time for That's a Stretch with Glenn Stretch Smith, former Cowboys coach and scout. And
he might have been the coach again tomorrow if Garrett had gotten Dak Prescott hurt in this
game. He may have been back on the staff. But to Stretch, I want to start right there where Ed just, and you can imagine where Ed, if you followed him on Twitter, and boy, Ed is prolific on Twitter. Ed was upset and thought Jason Garrett was out of his mind to be playing these starters and go after this win that may be the springboard for wonderful things that could happen to this team. Stretch, what did you make of the Cowboys' decision? Obviously, Zeke Elliott and some of the linemen were out, but to go for the win and play their starting quarterback the entire game.
Yeah, initially, guys, when Suafilo went out, I thought surely they're going to take him out here. But the more I get to thinking about, I try to get into, the flow of the coaches. What's being said on the headsets? What are guys really? What is their feeling in that locker room? And when you look at the posture of the football team, when you think about how critical we've been of, say, Linehan, the red zone, some of the things that they've done, then the fact that they get Tavon Austin back this week, I think they put a whole different set of problems on the field for a Seattle team. And I say that because I often wonder, is Chris Richard coming in and helping the offense by saying, hey, here's what gives my old employer, the Seattle Seahawks, here's what gives them issues. And then you start seeing what the Cowboys were doing by lining both Austin and Beasley in the slots and really giving a defense a whole set of issues to work on. I mean, I thought it was a heck of a gamble. Would I have gambled like that? Probably not. But now, after the fact, I mean, I think you can see what Jason was trying to do, how he was trying to help even his play caller get into a better feel, a better momentum builder into the playoffs. And then also, his quarterback, who quite frankly made a few throws that were not very good throws, and then he made some throws that were just out of his mind. And I think that he's trying to get all of those guys kind of with the arrow pointed up. And I think that's exactly what he accomplished. And I mean, I'd be surprised if he's not on the flight right now, tipping him back a little red wine and chasing it back with something else. I mean, I just thought what he did was try to get his team in position to springboard it into the playoffs. And it's hard for me to be critical of that.
Then it seems like maybe he should have just kicked the extra point and awarded himself a fifth quarter of playing time for Dak and the offense to get their act together.
Well, now you're going to try to draw me off sides like Mosley does, and no, that hard count didn't work. No, go for two. You scored right there. I didn't say win the game. I said get your team kind of going in the right direction. And so I think he said, hey, let's go win this football game. And I think they had a heck of a 2-point play. I can tell you that. I can tell you it looked like they had practiced that play a bunch. They ran it to perfection. He was wide open. So I don't think there was any question of whether they were going to convert on the 2-point play or not.
Well, while you're enthusiastic, it seems like profanity at this point is only a mile away from the tip of your tongue. Let's have Matt just ask the first positional question for grading purposes.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for that, Ed.
Bring Matt back into the broadcast.
No, always here and enjoy getting Stretch's take on all this. Stretch, let's start with the offense, and let's start with someone you mentioned. And Dak Prescott, from a statistical standpoint, put up huge numbers and made some plays on the run, was accurate. Now, he missed Amari Cooper late, and I think the announcer, this is not one of Ed's favorites. I like Burkhardt. The other guy was the one who said...
Would you ask the damn question? Now he did it. Now, there, he finally did it. It was you,
stop
more you
using foul language. He said he missed a layup there. What did you think about the way the quarterback played today? I mean, you have to give this guy an A.
Yeah. I thought he played really well. Again, I think there's some teaching moments out of that film where you pull that out and you say, look at your feet right here. Do a better job of setting your feet. Let's work on this. Let's work on that. But as far as him throwing the ball on the move, I thought he made some really good checks in the football game. I like that they lined up in some empty sets and, kind of let the box empty out and clean it up for him a little bit. I thought he played a really good football game, and he missed some throws, but again, I think it's all things that can be corrected through footwork. And so, I mean, for that reason, I'm giving him a B+ for what he did today, how he led his team to a win, and the fact that he wanted to play. I mean, you could tell. I mean, you look at a guy's posture on the sidelines. I mean, he was ready to go play and win the football game, and I think there's something to be said for that, and I think there's something to be said for the momentum of this football team and how he shouldered that and said, "Hey, let's go get this win."
Thought he did show some good posture over there. Now let's talk about running back. Somebody named Darius came off the practice squad, and he was involved. Rod Smith. What did you think about the running back position? Olawale got involved.
Yeah, I mean they not much in the running game, but I mean did a nice job in pass protection. I thought you saw him stand up and pick up some blitzes. Those are the things that you want to see. You want to see your running backs do. I mean, there was a time with the Jackson kid. I wish he would have hit it a little more north and south, but he'll learn through film and all those things. The speed of the game. I thought he did an okay job. Again, Olawale. They put him in there a couple times because he's a little bigger, thicker body, and did an adequate job of picking up the blitzes. Rod Smith is, he's kind of what he is. I mean, he's kind of a special teams guy that needs to, that needs to get a few touches, and he got those touches. And I thought they gave you a winning effort, and I thought they gave you a B, kind of a B effort.
B for the running backs. And before we get to the receivers and tight ends, and boy, one tight end in particular, offensive line, team that they had Tyron Smith, Zach Martin obviously out of this game, and then as you have already noted, Su'a-Filo checked out with an injury. What did you make of the way the offensive line held up?
Just okay. I mean, Olivier Vernon, he can cause you some problems. I mean, I do like it. It feels like they played a cleaner game. I mean, I didn't see a lot of I saw a couple of holding penalties, but I didn't see anything that was out of the ordinary. I mean, Connor Williams got beat one time inside. That happens, especially to a rookie. But I thought they gave you I thought they gave you a winning effort. And anytime you can, do a decent job protecting the quarterback, not turn anybody loose. I didn't see any real hard mental mistakes. I did like that. They were able to. And I didn't mention this when Greg, the quarterback, he did a nice job with his cadence today. Drew him off sides a few times, and when your offensive line can kind of, hold their water and sit in there on those hard count situations, I mean, that told me mentally they were in the game, and so I'm going to give that group a B as well.
A B for the offensive line, B for the running backs, and let's start with the tight ends in that group. And Schultz had a catch early in the ball game.
You're going to start with Schultz. Are you serious?
Yeah. But
Blake Jarwin got drug tested after the game because he had 3 touchdown catches. You're going to start with Darren Schultz.
No. Dalton is his name.
Schultz,
but no, I appreciate you stepping all over me. I was just going to kind of set up the greatness of one Blake Jarwin and his performance. Ed, I mean, do we have to give this group an A? What did you see from Jarwin, and did you kind of see this coming?
Well, no, I didn't see it coming. I mean, this is a group that I've been, probably overly critical of. I mean, they're not great into the line blocking guys. None of them are. But to see today how they attacked the Giants and how they let Jarwin kind of, they allowed him just to run through the middle, and it was good for him. I mean, I thought he had a great feel on both the post route for the second touchdown. He ran across the field and then got skinny when they were running vertical in the first touchdown. And then he, caught the ball and it turned north and south. He really, I was shocked, to be honest with you. I mean, I think he had 119 yards, something like that. But I was shocked that they were allowing him just to kind of dictate whatever, whatever he wanted to do, not banging him off the line of scrimmage, not rerouting him at all. And then, on the last touchdown, I mean, you could see where he was running that deep cross. He saw the quarterback in trouble. Hey, he got into the voided area, and that's something that, I mean, to me, it starts to give you confidence in the fact that, these guys can catch the football. They can catch the football in the open field. I mean, even you mentioned Schultz. I mean, to run in there and run that drive route where he drives it hard inside, pivots out, and gets back to the flat. I mean, all those are things, again, guys, that the defense is going to have to look at, tomorrow. Seattle's defense, Ken Norton, that defensive staff is really going to have a hard time saying, holy cow, I mean, they've got a lot more weapons than when we played them the first time around. And Cooper and, Beasley, now Austin back in the slot, now the tight ends and their ability to get vertical. I mean, it's going to cause you some issues. And I'm going to give that, I'm going to give in specific one grade Blake Jarwin a B+ for a really good job in the passing game.
Boy, I thought he was great, and I would have given him an A, but if you want to go B+, I totally understand. Now, let's go with the wide. By the way, did you see that first 3-touchdown game for a Cowboys tight end since Billy Joe Dupree? The year I was born, 1973, Billy Joe Dupree had 3 touchdowns in a game. Witten never did it, and Jarwin did it today. What a remarkable performance. Okay,
They're taking that big portrait of Witten down at the Star today and putting up a Blake Jarwin action shot from today's game.
I'm not opposed to that. The wide receivers, walk us through it, and kind of a up and down day for that group.
Yeah, I'm a little concerned that Cooper kind of got ridden out of bounds on the one before he ran the 2-pump or the that slant and go.
Sluggo.
I'd like to see him. There you go. I'd like to see him be a little more physical in those situations. But when you look at Beasley, I like the job Austin did. I liked it Hearn. I mean, he saw his quarterback in trouble and he broke for the back cone and caught the big pass. So the receivers I thought really did a nice job today. I think that when you look at the group as a whole, and I give them a grade as a whole. I mean, there were some drops, and I'd like to see a few things get cleaned up. But I mean, as a group, a B+ and a really winning effort from your wide receivers.
All right, B+ for the wide receivers, the tight ends, and let's before we get over to the defensive side of the ball, boy, I hate to do this, but you have been extremely tough on this unit. Let's look at the special teams, and obviously a couple of coverage issues today, and then also the kicker. I mean, who can trust this kicker right now? Good from long distance, a little bit iffy on short distance.
Yeah, the coverage units, it's just concerning to me. I mean, especially when you probably get the ticky-tack call and you get backed up after you're ahead in the football game. Well, you'd like to see some guys really flying down the field to go cover, staying in their lanes. I mean, being physical, and I am not seeing that, and it really concerns me that, yeah, you get a 15-yard penalty, but I mean, you turn around and let him have a 30-yard return, and to me, it's just, and to open the game, I mean, they return the football out to about the 34, 35-yard line. The coverage teams, I'm not gonna get into a bad word. I'm gonna tell you, they need to do something to get better. And I think if it's not spending enough time on it, if it's coaching, whatever the issue is, Jason's got to address the fact that that's got to get cleaned up. Because, I mean, again, in a playoff situation, that costs you to let them return that ball out to midfield like they were able to do. It's unexcusable, and it's something that has been an issue all year. And I don't see any corrections being made. I don't see and again, I don't go out and watch practice and sit around out there. I just watch it on the film. I watch a game, and I don't see guys flying around and really, running with that reckless abandon like, you need to do to play special teams. And for that reason, I'm going to give that group a D, and that's about all I'm going to say about it.
I think Jason should put Dak on special teams. He needs some more plays, build some confidence in those groups.
If it calls him to be any better, put anybody out there.
Boy, Ed has been so snarky and so sarcastic.
People love that.
On, I don't know.
On Twitter, they really love it.
Yeah, exactly.
The responses
most times they don't even get it.
Nothing brings out the anger in them like that.
Yeah. Boy, you would never try to draw anybody off sides out there. Let's go over to the Cowboys defense. Stretch and walk through some of this. The group up front there, the front four. What'd you think of the pass rush, and then the fact that Saquon Barkley did have 109 yards and a touchdown, including. Boy, it's like those announcers had never seen anybody jump up into the air like he did from the 3-yard line. What'd you make of the Cowboys' defensive line?
Yeah, the defensive line, I really thought played pretty well, all things considering. I mean, they got a big turnover. They were able to get some inside heat. I saw some good things from Taco. I mean, Taco continues, in my mind, we've talked about this, other than the quarterback, that's one of the toughest positions to transition to in the NFL. And I saw him today, really do a nice job of running, an ET stunt or a TE where the tackle goes first and then he loops underneath. I saw patience. I see him come off the ball. Randy Gregory, still, you can see that he's kind of a pass rush guy. I mean, in run situations, he had an opportunity to squeeze it down on that first drive, and he's kind of standing outside waiting on a boot as if he doesn't trust his speed to go chase, Eli Manning down. But those are all things that can be corrected. And the defensive line today, gave you a good enough effort to win the football game. I hated that they let Saquon rip off that 68-yard run. That can happen in a two-back situation. And, Sean Lee kind of gave it that. He was hesitant when he saw that. We saw him run that two-back zone play, and that's something you don't see a lot in the NFL anymore with not the fullback usually not being in the game. But, the read and recognition side of that needs to clean up some, and I think it will. But defensive line wise, I think they gave you a workmanlike effort, and it really is. It seems redundant to kind of how I'm grading some of these guys because it really has been. It's felt like for about 3 weeks here that's kind of the effort they've given you as they've gone to work and kind of done what they need to do and gave you a winning effort. And I just think it's a B effort.
All right. Linebackers. I know there's one linebacker you may give a little special credit to, the Karan Woods is a guy you were kind of talking to me about, but just the rest of the group with Leighton Vander Esch being out there. Ed was scared to death when he saw him down the ground and was ready to pounce on Jason Garrett, the coaches, for making him be out there. And then Jalen Smith, what'd you think of the linebacking core?
Well, I thought Jalen played a really good game. I think this group, I mean, they've kind of established themselves as the leaders on this defense. It frightened me a little bit when I saw Vander Esch on the ground, but after I kind of saw where he had gotten leg whipped and with Jalen, I really kind of thought, well, that's not going to be that bad, and so you breathe a sigh of relief there. But I thought the linebacking crew all together really played pretty well in the football game, and they again, I love that they knocked that ball out. I mean, when Saquon went, I'd be coaching him too. Don't reach that ball for the goal line. I don't know. I was really surprised that Jason didn't challenge that play there on the goal line. But I thought it was very football reactionary that he knocked that ball out of there. So there were some things that I saw that were good from this linebacking group, and Wilson continues to do so. This group is they're really good, and I'm almost concerned about Sean Lee. I don't see him getting back in the flow, being the linebacker that he used to be. That really is kind of a little bit of my concern. And I know you got to play, and I know he's been out a long time, but I don't see him running around with the reckless abandon that I used to see him play with. That's concerning to me, but overall, a B+ for the linebackers.
All right, and just to update everybody, that's just been listed as a minor bruise to the shin for Leighton Vander Esch, and so they dodge a bullet there, it appears. And then walk us through, Stretch, if you would, the secondary.
It's really concerning to me that Byron Jones does not get his hands on the football. I mean, he's in position today on 2 go routes, and he's not in that bad coverage with his feet. But one time he looks wrong inside, the ball gets thrown outside, his head position's wrong, his hands. He does not break footballs up. And, 2 weeks in a row we've seen teams now go at Byron Jones and say, you know what, we're going to go right at him. And so that's concerning for me. Xavier Woods, guys, I really like. I think he'll he plays with that. I go back to saying that term, the reckless abandon. I mean, he will knock you out if you come across there, and he's clean with how he does it. He hits with his shoulders, got his head up. Wouzier got the pick. I love how he baited that because they were trying to get, they were running the concept of a flat route down there and then kind of trying to get the corner over it. And he actually baited Manning into throwing that corner, kind of acting like he was going to drive on the flat. And then he settled straight back into an interception, which was a really good job by him. So, I like that side. I saw some good things out of Brown. I saw some, I'm seeing some good things, but it really concerns me why Byron Jones cannot get his hands on the football. I mean, I think his ball skills are really something that he's got to dial in and get tuned up on. And I just don't know that this is the time of year going into a playoff game that he can do it. And anytime you're going to face a quarterback in Russell Wilson who can get outside the pocket, and boy, you got to cover, and he'll throw it to his guys that are covered. That's concerning for me. But as a group, I'm giving that group a B because again they got the big interception, Woods physical, hitting, running with that reckless abandon. So I'm going to give that group a B too. And really, all around today, I thought the football team played with that kind of above average effort, but and above average grade. Except again, guys, the special teams and the fact that they're not getting that corrected. Byron Jones not getting his hands on the football, and hopefully they can work with Dak and get him to set his feet a little better. But guys, I think winning the football game today speaks volumes for what Jason Garrett's trying to do and the message that he's preaching.
Ed has this down as one of the worst wins in Cowboys history. But now, Stretch, by the way, now that we kind of are, getting familiar, boys, Seahawks, look at them, what they're doing to the Cardinals. They've been able to hold these cards off. Do you like this Cowboys team to get hot in the playoffs? Does this look like a team that could use this as a springboard win? And how many do they won? 7 of the last 8 games? Does that sound right?
7 out of 8.
Hottest team.
Every time they've scored in the last 8 weeks, they've won.
Every time they've scored. That's a good. I like that. This is a hot team. Stretch, is this the year they finally get past not only the wild card round, but do you see this team going to the NFC title game?
Well, I do think that, I think this team is playing as good as anybody in the NFC right now. And I say that, obviously Chicago and what they can do defensively. I mean, we could sit here and make a case for, I think, 4 or 5 teams. But I do like where the cat. I don't think I feel like I'm much of a homer, but I do think the Cowboys are playing good football. I think Jason Garrett has done a really good job with this football team. Are there some areas they need to correct and brush up? Yeah, absolutely. Do they need to get better in the red zone? Yes. Do they need to get better on special teams? Yes. But overall, I mean, this team, you could make a case, I think, guys, for this team, go and yes, make it to the championship in the NFC. I also think you could sit here and make a case for them to get beat and go, be one and done. So I'm going to choose to hope that they hope they go win a couple times so we can get on this podcast and I can see if I can make it 2 in a row, not swearing for Ed Werder, who now has become, my moral compass and, kind of my father figure to say, hey, Stretch, quit using foul language.
Well, and I'm glad I could teach you a little something. I'm glad you're willing to be coached, and you're assured of being on at least one more time and trying to make it 2 in a row because we'll do a podcast next week whether they win or lose.
Well, if that's the case, then, and I went through without saying anything, and you didn't give me a grade, why didn't you give me a damn A? I wanted an A for not swearing.
Don't raise your voice like that to me.
Yeah, no, very workmanlike effort from you, and we'll watch you on TV this evening, and boy, it's great to hear you say that Ed is kind of your moral compass. I know that means a lot to him, and we appreciate what
the Baptist guy sitting next to me is a little appalled by the whole thing.
All right, Stretch.
Well, I'm sure the remainder or the rest of this podcast will be fun with you two bantering and arguing like Laverne and Shirley. Hey, Happy New Year, fellas. Good luck to you.
Happy New Year, buddy.
There he goes, Glenn Stretch Smith.
Finishes with a 40.
Yeah, he does. And, all right, rest in peace, Penny Marshall, as he mentions Laverne and Shirley.
He's always big on current events.
Yeah,
pop culture.
Man,
That's
there's no one.
Stretch.
There's no one who keeps up with our country's comings and goings like Stretch does. And that's a Stretch. And in good spirits today is the Cowboys sprint toward the playoffs.
There's no stopping them now.
36-35 win over the New York Giants. This team's very excited, and a quarterback coming off a 4-touchdown performance. And really, some of those off-schedule plays, Ed, brought the excitement, as well as Blake Jarwin. New weapon unleashed on the NFL.
I'll tell you the new weapon. New weapon, Cole Beasley. That's the guy they've got to keep involved like they got involved today. I mean,
he's an old weapon.
Yeah, but they've overlooked him almost all year long. What a play at the end of the game by Dak Prescott, running to his left and a right-handed quarterback making that throw, carrying the ball that distance and being accurate with it, and a terrific catch by Cole Beasley to stay inside the end zone. But
it was a beautiful catch, and the whole one knee equals like 2 feet kind of thing. I mean, that came up. Right. And that was a gorgeous catch by Cole Beasley, able to pull that off. Now, Ed, you're a guy who, as I recall, you've been with Seattle, even in Super Bowl type atmospheres, and you've covered them for ESPN, and you've known Pete Carroll over the years, and now we know, and what we're still waiting on as we tape this in the aftermath of the Cowboys' glorious win over the Giants is to try to figure out, okay, when is this going to be? There's been thoughts, could this be on Fox Sunday afternoon, or could this be a Saturday night game?
Fight over it. Be a big fight over it between
they
Fox
want
and NBC.
Yeah,
Cowboys rate like no other team in football.
They want this game. Both of them will fight over the Cowboys, and we'll see how this thing comes out, and we'll stay on top of that story for you. But, Ed, as you look toward this thing, Cowboys have already played a game at Seattle this year, did not go in the Cowboys' direction. In fact, was there was one game this year was like 16-8. Was that the Panthers?
Yeah.
That was early.
That was their season
opener. Their season opener. But Seattle, they didn't do anything either. I mean, they were struggling against them
They started 0-2.
To move the ball, and but Cowboys now play Seattle, and I think they have to have a lot more confidence, and they'll have that home field advantage. Cowboys have only lost one game, that game to the Titans. They lost at home this entire season. Ed, as you start to dig in on this Seattle team as well as you know them, what are some of the things that stand out as we start to get our audience ready for this one?
Well, I think one thing, and you mentioned Chris Richard as having been one of the 3 coordinators that Pete Carroll fired this offseason, and he coming to Dallas to replace Matt Eberflus and evolving as the play caller, even though Rod Marinelli is technically the defensive coordinator. But if you look at how the Cowboys have played, this particular team, or at least the team with Dak Prescott as the quarterback, he's played Seattle twice, lost both times. And if you look at the aggregate numbers, he has 1 touchdown pass against them, 4 interceptions, and 9 sacks. And his high passing game is 181 yards. The Cowboys have scored 1 touchdown in 8 quarters against the Seattle Seahawks. Not only that, but we know how bad they've been in the red zone this year. And against Seattle in the red zone this year, they were 1 for 3. And in the game in 2017, they were 0 for 2. So they're 1 for 5 in the red zone against Seattle. And worse than all of that is that the Cowboys have committed 6 turnovers in the 2 games, and Seattle has committed 0. So that has been, by and large, the difference. The quarterback, to me, the teams are virtual duplicates of one another. They're both run-heavy teams. They're both, physical defensive teams, but nobody has run the ball, not even the Cowboys run the ball with the conviction that the Seattle Seahawks do. Going into today, they had run the ball 200 more times than anybody else in the league. And, last year, Russell Wilson, the quarterback, led the Seahawks in passing and rushing, the only player in the league with that distinction. This year, he ranks 4th on the team in rushing. So they're a great run football team, and we've all seen how Russell Wilson can extend plays, run for yardage. He's as good a deep ball thrower as there is in football. Doug Baldwin is getting healthy. That's his favorite receiver. Tyler Lockett's had a huge game as a speed guy, the vertical threat down the field. He's drawn more penalty yards than anybody else in football. That's how often he has gotten behind secondaries and forced a flag. And I think if you look at the game that they played earlier this year that the Cowboys lost 24-13, one thing that really stands out to me, Matt, as an area where maybe the Cowboys can do a lot more than they did, and fortunately for them, it involves their best player, Ezekiel Elliott. He only had 19 touches against the Seahawks and only 3 catches early in the year. He averages 25 touches per game. And so only the Falcons have allowed more receiving yards to running backs than Seattle, and nobody has allowed more touchdown receptions to players at the running back position than the 7 scored against Seattle. So Zeke Elliott seems like the guy. From that point of view, it looks like a perfect matchup for the Cowboys to be able to invest heavy number of carries in their best player, both run and pass.
I find it interesting. All those were some really good research there on Seattle as we start to get look at this thing, that the Cowboys had to really save their season with a firing of offensive line coach, and that really fired up their run game, and they brought in Mark Colombo. They elevated him, and then brought Hudson Houck down as a consultant, and that really helped. And then as Stretch and others and the two of us have noted, the the offensive line coach the Cowboys wanted is the one who took over with Seattle, Mike Solari, and a team that was not expected to have a good running game and to really be very good on the offensive line actually had a pretty good offensive line this season. And I noticed Chris Carson, who, as I recall, Ed, you'll probably have this number right with you, had a pretty good day against the Cowboys the first time around, had 122 yards and a touchdown, I believe, today. Now, they struggled to beat the Cardinals. In fact, needed a last-second field goal in regulation to beat them 27-24. Now, Ed, one thing that I find interesting as well, over the years, though, this quarterback, Russell Wilson, sometimes we think of a mobile quarterback as a guy who doesn't get sacked a lot. No, some of these mobile quarterbacks do get sacked a lot. Russell Wilson has taken a lot of sacks in this game today, in fact. I'm counting them up here, and was sacked several times. Looks like 5 times by Arizona. In fact, somebody named Rodney Gunner got him a couple of times. Corey Peters had a sack. Antoine Bethea, you remember him. Chandler Jones, who's a good pass rusher for Arizona, all had sacks today. So both Dak and Russell Wilson will take a sack. You know, what the Cowboys wanted to see today, and I think they saw it to a certain extent, Dak did still go ahead and take a couple sacks. What they would like for him to do is get rid of the ball and throw it away if he has to, but not sit back there so long. But one thing, Ed, that you've banged the drum on with Dak, and you brought up the turnover ratio between the Cowboys and Seattle, is the fact that Dak has fumbled the ball a ton this season. In fact, from what I know, unless he's been passed by somebody, led the league in fumbles.
Right. And
at least he's doing better in that category these last couple of games. He's protecting the ball better, and you even saw it today, really wrapped the ball up even when he was sacked.
And the thing with Seattle, we've talked about, hey, on defense, the Cowboys, you know, they've got to create some turnovers and help their offense, because the offense does not generate a lot of points itself. I mean, they're going to be the worst offensive team in the playoffs in terms of ranking, in terms of point differential. You know, the Cowboys are just look like the weak team in the field in the NFC. The problem with that is Seattle does not turn the football over. They went into today's game against the Cardinals with the fewest turnovers in the league. They only had 10. So banking on that is going to be a real challenge. And but I think that's something the defense is going to have to do. They're going to have to give the offense a couple of short field opportunities or score themselves like they did in the Tampa Bay game. So we've seen a little bit better ability by the defense to create turnovers. They had 2 on the first 2 possessions in the game against the Giants. And then I think you could argue that they were responsible for 2 of the 3 touchdowns that they got against Tampa Bay. So that's got to be priority 1 in terms of the defense, is to create some turnovers in this game. They haven't done it against Seattle.
No, and I think the Vikings would have been a better matchup because Kirk Cousins, I mean, he has ability, but just it's not like he has the kind of playoff pedigree that Russell Wilson, and he just hasn't gone as far as Russell Wilson has. And this is a Seattle team that, quite honestly, I mean, Ed, if you had to say, like, try to pick which of these teams, the Cowboys or Seattle's playing with the most house money, one team is there earlier than we expected. I'm talking about Seattle, a team that looked to be in a big-time rebuilding mode, and yet here they are in the playoffs. Cowboys thought they'd go back to 2016, were in a ditch this season, and then turned it around and won 7 of 8 games. I think we would say the Cowboys may be the hotter team, but Seattle might. There's a chance Seattle's the looser team coming into this game because of expectations going into the season and the fact I mean, of all things you might say about this offense of Seattle, it's certainly not Russell Wilson. There's no reason he'll come in tight. I mean, he's been in plenty of these situations.
He's led some of the most remarkable comebacks in NFL playoff history. He's been in 2 Super Bowls. He won one of them and was one throw or one handoff, many would say, away from winning 2 in a row against the Patriots. So he's as good a quarterback, I think, as you can face in the NFC this time of year. He's not Tom Brady, but he's pretty good. And you're right about the rebuilding. You know, I talk to people, given the purge that they underwent, especially on the defensive side of the ball, you know, with Michael Bennett being traded, with Cam Chancellor being gone, Richard Sherman being allowed to leave. there were people in the league who thought that they'd struggle to get back to the playoffs again during Russell Wilson's career. And instead, I think you could argue that Pete Carroll's performed maybe his most unexpectedly successful job as a coach in getting them back to the playoffs right away. And they play in a very difficult division. And obviously the perception is Dallas does not and has benefited immensely from the general weakness of the teams in the NFC East, although Philadelphia, now the defending Super Bowl champion, has made the playoff field as well.
Yeah, they have, and they've done it with Foles. And that'll be interesting to see. That's going to be another interesting storyline in these playoffs is if Carson Wentz is feeling better, what do they do there? I think they'll make the same decision, perhaps, Ed, that the Cowboys made with Steve Berline and Troy Aikman all those years ago when Aikman declared himself ready to go and the Cowboys decided to stick with what they believe was the hot hand in Berline that season, and the Eagles will go with Foles. You think any different on that front?
No, I think they'll play with. I think Foles got hurt in the game today. Apparently suffered some kind of rib injury that was serious enough to knock him out of the game, and he had a $1 million playing incentive that he lost as a result. That he just narrowly missed whatever percentage of plays he had, and it was because of the few plays that he missed at the end of the game with his rib injury. So we'll see, because obviously they have to turn around and play right away as well. So. I think Foles is their guy right now. I think it's pretty clear that Carson Wentz is not healthy and really hasn't been at any point in the season. He hasn't really been himself. He never regained the form where he was, potential MVP his rookie year.
They could get that old Michael Vick Kevlar vest that you and I have reported on before. Did you ever try that on?
The one Romo wore?
No, well,
I hit the
Romo
guy with a
ended up wearing
shovel.
one.
Remember the
That's it.
unequal vest? Yeah, before the Washington game.
I remember there was something involved with you when you had to shovel out before that game. The hijinks of Ed
I had
Werder.
to shovel after Garrett today.
That's right. You were shoveling like crazy on that.
But hey, speaking of Garrett, and as we wrap this up, I don't want to miss this
This
point.
would be a good. This is an apology to
it's not an
Jason
apology.
Garrett from Ed Werder. Go ahead.
It's that the Cowboys have a lot riding on this game against the Seahawks and whatever games they play after that. For one, I think it determines whether Jerry Jones follows through and brings back Jason Garrett as his head coach, as I believe he wants to do. But what if he's 1-3 in the playoffs, and even though he's been as successful as any NFC coach except for Pete Carroll, what if he loses at home in a first-round playoff game again? We've heard Jerry a couple different times in the month of December talk about, hey, Jason needs to start winning some of these postseason games. He needs a championship to validate him as a coach. And there's a lot of truth to that. And it's interesting to me that Jerry's the one bringing that up, that he's creating that standard. And then the other guy, I think, whose future is going to be determined is Dak Prescott's. Jerry has said all along that, hey, he's our franchise quarterback, and we're going to extend him this offseason. He's got a lot of money riding on this. I think this will determine whether he gets paid as a $15 million a year starter or he gets paid as a $20 million a year starter.
I think what will happen, those are all good points. I think that Jerry, even if they lose, if they lose bad, all bets might be off. If it's a close game and they lose, I think Jerry will count the Giants' win as a playoff win because I felt like it was a playoff atmosphere in that game today.
Here's the other thing, and this to me is the first thing that Jerry has to think about if he deliberates the future of Jason Garrett as a head coach, and that is, if I keep Jason Garrett as my head coach, do I risk losing Chris Richard to another team that makes him their head coach? So that would be something that might give Jerry some kind of pause. Maybe making him the defensive coordinator in title would not be enough to keep him. I think Richard is going to get job interviews. I mean, people who are agents representing coaches say this is the worst group of potential head coaches that they've seen in 30 years. And so a guy like Chris Richard, who has so distinguished himself in his first season in Dallas, and especially after what he's done twice against the Saints, once while he was with Seattle and once earlier this season in Dallas, he's going to get interviews. And there is a possibility he's going to get a head coaching job this year. Is Jerry Jones willing to risk losing Chris Richard to keep Jason Garrett.
And the only thing I'll say to that, I have brought up that point several times, both in print and on podcast, Ed, but there's a belief among people we know pretty well that for some reason they don't believe Chris Richard will be the head coach here. And I don't get it because he's really done well. The players seem to love him, all of that. But there's and again, I've not gotten to the bottom of, okay, why? I mean, I have asked that, of course. Why wouldn't he? I just don't think Jerry is going to make Chris Richard the coach. Now, tomorrow, you're right. At Black Monday across the NFL, and there will be one coaching change that will not occur. Jacksonville Jaguars have come out and said they will keep Dave Caldwell, their GM, and Doug Marrone, their head coach. That's good news for probably not Jacksonville Jaguar fans, but Baylor fans, because Matt Rule is beloved by Tom Coughlin, and he coached with him up in the New York Giants. And so there's a thought that Baylor will get to hold on to the great Matt Rule for another season.
Maybe Tampa Bay will replace him with Dirk Cutter.
Let's hope not.
Dirk Cutter has been fired, so there's another opening already.
Dirk Cutter has been thrown overboard with Tampa Bay. We expect several more announcements as we go. We do know John Harbaugh, even before the Ravens were able to pull that game out. And then we'll have to see what happens with a man they call Greg Williams in Cleveland. Will that be a job he's able to, because they rallied and they played really well under him?
5-3 under him.
They
love Freddie Kitchens as the offensive coordinator. I know for a fact, because I covered a Cleveland game in Denver 2 weeks ago, that they would like to keep Freddie Kitchens and allow some, of the success Baker Mayfield has experienced in this offensive system to carry over into a year two rather than have him starting all over again, which makes sense. But they did not sound to me like Greg Williams was going to keep this job. Interim coach, even though he's done well. Obviously, those situations often don't turn out well long term. So I was told he has a chance, but it's a small chance.
Okay, and back to your point, the Cowboys really can't afford to lose two really talented defensive play callers in a row. Matt Eberflus, who you know and you talked to after that loss to the Colts. Eberflus was the one last year, and then Chris Richard this year. If he gets hired somewhere else, but I mean that's going to be interesting. If they lost, would Jerry like him enough to fire Jason to keep Chris Richard for whatever reason? I've been told no, that's not going to happen. But you still never totally know with Jerry, other than the fact we know he loves Jason Garrett. It's more likely that Garrett would be back and the offensive coordinator would get changed out. Although now that they've discovered Blake Jarwin in this offense, I think you could roll with it. Ed, great to have you back from Colorado. I know you had some good holidays there and spent some time with Henry, your grandson, and you had some good times. So I hope Santa was good to him. I trust that he was. Thought Frito fought through some tough times today. He's been a little under the weather, but he did a nice job. We'll still see he has some editing to do. But Ed, appreciate it. And
I look forward to being out at the stadium next week.
Let's both do that.
For this game,
we'll
for Westwood 1. You'll be there for the Dallas Morning News, and then we'll reconvene in one of those suites and have a high time while we do another podcast.
We really only work for these people to put ourselves in position for this podcast. Let's both admit that. It is the Doomsday Podcast, live from Allen, Texas, the studios of Frito Nation Productions. Everybody have a great week. We'll talk to you next Saturday or Sunday evening.
Lights are shining, stockings have been hung. You're praying for your daughter, lighting candles for your son. They're living in the city now, you don't see them anymore. This year will not be like the ones before. And the streets are all but empty, the bars have all shut down, and it's hard to find.
A lot can happen between falling in love with a house online and owning it. Between imagining living there and breathing in your new home for the first time. Having an advocate who can help you navigate the complex world of financing, inspections, negotiating, analyzing the market, and talking through any anxieties that may pop up, that can make all the difference. That's what the expertise of a Realtor can do for you. Realtors are members of the National Association of Realtors and bound by a code of ethics, because that's who we are.
Start clean with Clorox, because Clorox delivers a powerful clean every time. Because messes happen. Because the charcoal mask. Great, because why would I put that on my face when I could drop it in my sink? This is what I get for multitasking. Ugh, why is charcoal so sticky?
Hello?
Hey, Janice. I am so sorry. I thought I was on mute. No, we don't need to reschedule. I'll just stay off camera. Ooh, yeah, that happens. So start clean with Clorox. Use Clorox products as directed.